A VIP billionaire disrespects a black employee, but the next day an unexpected visit to his house changes everything in a shocking way. What would happen if, in an instant, a billionaire's life were turned upside down, revealing the fragility of his power? In the luxurious mansion of Ethan Sullivan, a 45-year-old billionaire, everything seemed perfect. Surrounded by wealth, art, and status, he saw himself as the king of his empire. However, the life of Vanessa Harris, a 32-year-old black domestic worker, was marked by daily struggles and humiliations. A single mother of Mason, an 8-year-old boy, Vanessa worked tirelessly, dreaming of a better future for her son, even if it meant enduring Ethan's disdain. During a gala party, a small mistake by Vanessa, while serving the guests, triggers Ethan's wrath, who publicly humiliates her with racist comments. The mocking laughter of the guests echoes through the room, and as her heart breaks, Vanessa leaves the hall with her dignity still intact. The next day, however, a police raid on Ethan's mansion changes everything. FBI agents, armed with search warrants for money laundering, surround the property, bringing to light the hidden truth behind the billionaire's empire. The investigation triggers a whirlwind of events that connects Vanessa's past to Ethan's present, revealing a corrupt system that exploited marginalized communities, including her own origins in Brooklyn. With the help of Mark Johnson, an FBI agent who understands her struggle, Vanessa discovers that she possesses crucial information that could dismantle Ethan's empire. Now, Vanessa's choice involves not just seeking justice for herself, but also for everyone who suffered under the billionaires. In Vanessa's journey, the mansion, once a symbol of power, transforms into an emotional and legal battleground, where she finds herself in an unexpected position of control. Her story of overcoming, dignity, and the quest for justice intertwines with Ethan's downfall, showing that even amidst oppression, strength can arise from the most challenging circumstances. Vanessa, once invisible, now becomes a symbol of resistance and hope, proving that true greatness is not measured by wealth, but by the... Vanessa's life is not just a story of personal triumph, but a powerful reminder that justice can emerge in the most unexpected situations, transforming pain into strength and oppression into hope. The morning after the party, as the city awakened to another day, Vanessa sat at the table in her small kitchen, watching Mason play with his toys. The boy's smile was a balm for her heart, but the humiliation she had suffered the night before still weighed heavily on her mind. The echo of Ethan's guests' laughter haunted her, making her question her own self-worth. She had always been a fighter, but now she felt her courage was being tested in ways she had never imagined. What Vanessa did not know was that the raid on Ethan's mansion had only begun to stir the murky waters of her world. Inside the mansion, the scene was chaotic. FBI agents were rummaging through the place, searching for any clues that could lead to Ethan. The billionaire, once so self-assured, now paced nervously, his mask of power disintegrating. He was not just fighting for his freedom, he was also fighting for his status, which for him was synonymous with identity. Meanwhile, Vanessa decided she could no longer be just a spectator. The idea of having information that could dismantle Ethan's empire intrigued her, but at the same time, a deep fear paralyzed her. What if everything went wrong? What if she was seen as the traitor who dared to challenge such a powerful man? These questions left her restless, and the pressure mounted with each passing minute. Mark Johnson, the FBI agent, noticed Vanessa's internal struggle. He knew she had a story, a narrative that could change the course of the investigation. Mark was a principled man, someone who always strove to make a difference in his profession. He had also come from a difficult background, which made him more empathetic toward people like Vanessa. Over the following days, he would become an unexpected support for her, someone who would encourage her to face her fears. Vanessa and Mark began meeting at a cafe near her home. The conversations flowed, and she felt more comfortable sharing her memories of Brooklyn, where she grew up surrounded by challenges and prejudice. Mark listened intently, asking questions that helped her connect the dots between her past and the current situation. With each story, Vanessa felt her courage starting to blossom within her, even if it was timid and hesitant. On the other hand, Ethan, isolated in his mansion, tried to control the damage. He began surrounding himself with lawyers and public relations experts, trying to save his image. The fear of losing everything he had built made him increasingly desperate. He saw not only the possibility of prison, he saw his world crumbling. The pressure made him act erratically, leading him to make decisions that could be detrimental to himself. Tensions rose when Vanessa realized that Ethan's actions not only affected her life, but also those of other workers in the mansion who, like her, were treated as invisible. One of Vanessa's co-workers, Clara, a 50-year-old woman who had devoted her life to that house, began to face financial difficulties after the raid. Vanessa saw the pain in Clara's eyes and realized she was not alone in her struggle. At the same time, the friendship that was forming between Vanessa and Mark was becoming stronger, but also more complicated. The conversations that once seemed simple were now laden with expectations. With each encounter, Vanessa felt more determined, but also more vulnerable. The pressure of having to decide between protecting her own safety or doing the right thing left her restless. The moral dilemma weighed on her like a shadow, leading her to question her deepest beliefs. What did it really mean to be strong, to be a mother, to be a woman? And as she observed Clara's struggle, Vanessa realized that it wasn't just her who needed change. There was an entire system that needed to be dismantled. In a moment of reflection, Vanessa looked at Mason as he played. The boy's smile was what kept her steady. She knew she had to fight, not just for herself, but for all those who had been silenced. The journey was just beginning, and each step forward would be a test of her strength and determination. Vanessa's struggle was intensifying, and the line between oppression and the fight for justice was about to be crossed. The lives of everyone involved were about to change forever, and Vanessa, once invisible, was starting to see herself as a force to be reckoned with. Vanessa began to realize that her journey of self-discovery and resistance was far from simple. While her meetings with Mark were encouraging, they also brought to the surface deep fears she tried to bury. Every time she shared a part of her story, she felt a mix of relief and anguish. The exposed vulnerability left her open to judgment, and the idea that her life could change in an irreversible way haunted her. She longed for justice, but the weight of responsibility nearly made her retreat. Weeks passed and the atmosphere in the city grew increasingly tense. News about the investigation surrounding Ethan dominated the headlines. Vanessa saw her name mentioned anonymously in reports as a possible witness. This left her in a constant state of alert. She wondered whether she should come forward officially to the FBI or hide, protecting herself and Mason. The internal battle was fierce, and the pressure to decide left her exhausted. One morning, while watching Mason happily drawing in his notebook, an idea struck her hard. What if she could use the situation to help not only herself, but also Clara and others suffering under Ethan's control? This idea, although illuminating, also brought a new level of concern. The possibility of becoming an even bigger target paralyzed her. What would happen if Ethan found out she was considering cooperating? This doubt tormented her. At the same time, Mark began to reveal himself as more than just an FBI agent. He became a friend, someone with whom she could share her fears and insecurities. However, this friendship also brought complications. Vanessa realized she was becoming attached to him, and this attachment made her question her own intentions. Was she getting involved with him out of a need for support or something deeper? This uncertainty left her confused and hesitant to open her heart. Meanwhile, Ethan's emotional state deteriorated. He was beginning to act erratically, making decisions that isolated him even further. One night, in a fit of rage, he fired one of his top lawyers, believing that the team's loyalty was in question. This act not only undermined his defense, but also left the mansion staff like Clara in a constant state of anxiety. They knew they could be let go at any moment, and financial insecurity became a constant shadow in their lives. Clara, who had always been a source of strength for Vanessa, began to withdraw. The conversations that were once filled with laughter were now marked by uncomfortable silences. Vanessa tried to reach out, but Clara's sad expression disarmed her. She felt the weight of responsibility for her friend, but also a growing frustration at not being able to help her. What was once a supportive friendship was now threatened by external pressure and circumstances. In a moment of desperation, Vanessa decided she needed to take action. She began gathering information about Ethan's practices, speaking with other mansion staff, and trying to understand what was really going on. But with each step, she felt increasingly overwhelmed. The revelations of corruption and injustices surrounding Ethan disgusted her but also terrified her. She knew she was digging her own grave, and the idea of being seen as a traitor tormented her. One night, after another meeting with Mark, who encouraged her to move forward, Vanessa sat on her bed watching Mason sleep. The innocent beauty of her son reminded her of her mission. She couldn't let fear take over. But as the nights grew longer and the days darker, doubt began to creep into her mind. What if she failed? What if, in her quest for justice, she lost everything, even her relationship with Mason? That same night, as the city slept, Vanessa decided she needed a plan. The idea of becoming a voice against oppression motivated her, but she also knew she had to be cautious. And let us know in the comments which city you're watching this video from. That night, as Vanessa reflected on her choices and the possibility of becoming a witness against Ethan, an unexpected event occurred. A phone call that seemed like just another ordinary call turned into a turning point in her life. It was Clara, her friend, with a tone of voice that revealed a contained panic. "Vanessa, you need to come here, now," Clara said, the urgency almost palpable in her voice. Vanessa's heart raced. What could have happened? She quickly put on a shirt, grabbed her car keys, and left the house without stopping to think about the consequences. Mason was asleep, but her concern for Clara outweighed any hesitation. When she arrived at the mansion, she felt a tension in the air. Clara was waiting for her at the entrance, her eyes filled with tears. "It's Ethan. He's more out of control than ever. I don't know what to do," she said, her voice trembling. Vanessa pulled her into a tight hug, trying to calm her down. "Calm down, Clara." "What happened?" Vanessa asked as she led her friend to a more private place. Clara hesitated, but finally managed to tell her that Ethan had received an anonymous threat, and the situation was about to explode. "He's suspicious of everyone around him. He called me tonight and accused me of betrayal. I don't know what he might do, Vanessa. I'm scared." Vanessa's heart sank. She knew Ethan had become an unpredictable person, but hearing this made her realize the situation was even more serious than she had imagined. Clara's fear washed over her like a wave. At the same time, the idea that Ethan could retaliate against anyone he considered a threat made her reconsider her intentions to cooperate with the FBI. "We need to do something, Clara. We can't let him hurt you," Vanessa said, feeling a rising determination within her. But, as she spoke, a doubt began to haunt her. What if, in trying to protect Clara, she put her own life and Mason's at risk? The weight of that possibility was overwhelming. Clara, noticing Vanessa's hesitation, looked into her friend's eyes and said, "You can't let fear decide for you. You're stronger than you think. Think of Mason. Think of all the people who are struggling. If you don't do anything, who will?" Those words resonated in Vanessa's mind, challenging her to reflect on her own weaknesses. While they were talking, a noise from upstairs interrupted the moment. It was Ethan, and the rage emanating from him seemed almost palpable. Vanessa felt a chill in her stomach. She knew they couldn't stay there. With a surge of instinct, she grabbed Clara's hand and they ran out of the mansion, not looking back. Once in the car, panic took over Vanessa. As she drove, Clara's words echoed in her mind. "You're stronger than you think." But at the same time, doubt persisted. Could it be true? She had spent so much time trying to protect herself, and now she was about to throw herself into a dangerous situation. The idea of confronting Ethan seemed insane, but the possibility of leaving Clara alone in her struggle was unbearable. That night, as she drove through the dark streets, Vanessa realized she was at a turning point in her life. It was not just about her and Mason, it was about all the people affected by Ethan's actions. What was success for her? Being able to live peacefully or fighting for justice, even when it meant facing her own fears? The decision began to form in her mind. She had to do something. Clara's fight was her fight, and she could not allow herself to fail. What did it mean to be strong? It was to confront one's weaknesses and still take a step forward. It was time to stand up against oppression, even if it meant risking everything. When she got home, Vanessa felt a mix of fear and determination. What was at stake was greater than she had imagined. More than ever, she needed to find a way to confront Ethan, and in doing so, maybe she could save not only herself and Clara, but also free herself from the chains that bound her. The journey was far from over, but now she had a new purpose: to fight for justice, for her freedom, and for the protection of those she loved. That night, as Vanessa prepared to face the consequences of her decision, a whirlwind of emotions enveloped her. The echo of Clara's words still reverberated in her mind. "You're stronger than you think." But at the same time, doubt and fear haunted her. She knew that the choice to act meant putting herself on a fine line between fighting for justice and the imminent danger that Ethan represented. The next morning, Vanessa woke up before dawn. The silence in the house was comforting, but also alarming. Mason was still sleeping peacefully, and she couldn't help but think about how his life could be affected by her decisions. As she prepared breakfast, her mind was racing. What should she do first? She needed to connect with Clara, but she also thought about contacting the FBI. The idea of being a witness against Ethan made her stomach churn, but the urgency of the situation didn't allow her to hesitate. When she finally managed to speak with Clara, her friend's voice was trembling but determined. "I can't stay here. Ethan is getting more unstable. We need a plan." Vanessa felt the weight of responsibility. They were in this together, and Clara's determination inspired her. "Let's meet at the cafe on the corner. We need to talk in person and think about how to act," Vanessa said, feeling a rush of adrenaline coursing through her body. At the cafe, Clara seemed calmer, but there was still a glimmer of worry in her eyes. The two sat at a table in the back, out of sight of anyone who might be a threat. "What are you thinking of doing?" Clara asked. Vanessa hesitated, looking at the steaming coffee in her cup. "I think it's time to talk to the FBI. They need to know what's going on, and if Ethan is threatening you, that's a bigger risk than I thought." Clara nodded, but the insecurity was written all over her face. "What if he finds out? What if he, I don't know, does something to you or to Mason?" Her friend's concern was legitimate, and Vanessa found herself struggling against her own insecurities. "I can't leave you alone in this. If something happens, I wouldn't forgive myself," she replied, feeling determination grow within her. With that, they decided they would go to the FBI together, but the idea of exposing themselves to Ethan left them uneasy. The journey to the station felt longer than usual. At every corner, Vanessa wondered if Ethan might be watching her. Anxiety grew, and she tried to push away the negative thoughts. "Are you ready to face this?" Clara asked, breaking the silence. Vanessa took a deep breath. "I have to be. We can't keep living like this, afraid of him." Once they arrived, they were greeted by an agent who led them to an interrogation room. The environment was austere, with white walls and a cold table in the center. Vanessa felt a knot in her stomach, but when she looked at Clara, she saw that her friend was determined. They explained the situation, and the agent took notes with a serious expression. When Vanessa mentioned the threats, she realized she was opening up in a way she never had before. After the meeting, the agent asked some questions about Ethan and his behaviors. Vanessa began to report the changes she had noticed in him, how he had become controlling and aggressive. Each word felt heavier, as if a part of her was stripping bare in front of the man listening to her. At the end of the conversation, the agent promised to investigate further. As they left the station, a new weight settled on Vanessa's shoulders. She had taken an important step, but what would come next was uncertain. "And now?" Clara asked, looking worried. "Now we need to stay vigilant and ready to act." "Ethan won't take this well," Vanessa replied, adrenaline still coursing through her veins. In the following days, the tension increased. Vanessa became more cautious, avoiding places she used to frequent and monitoring any strange movements around her. The once peaceful life turned into a constant state of alertness. Mason noticed something was wrong, but Vanessa worked hard to keep things normal for him, even as she was falling apart on the outside. One night, while trying to put Mason to sleep, she felt a wave of despair. What had she done? The consequences of her actions were about to manifest, and the thought that Ethan could retaliate sent her into a panic. "I can't fail," she murmured to herself, looking at her son's peaceful face. "I can't let him hurt you." Vanessa's fight was just beginning, and she knew the road ahead would be full of obstacles. But now there was a flame of determination burning within her. She was not only fighting for her own freedom, but for Clara's, Mason's, and everyone else who could be affected by Ethan. A new version of herself was being born, and this version was ready to face the storm approaching. As days passed, Vanessa's life became a constant dance between anxiety and determination. The decision to go to the FBI had been a milestone. She felt as if she had crossed a bridge, but now on the other side the path was foggy. The sense of freedom she had imagined upon making the report mixed with the weight of uncertainty. However, something had changed within her. The courage that once seemed distant now pulsed inside her. Each morning, Vanessa looked at herself in the mirror and asked, "Who am I now?" She realized that although fear was still present, there was a strength beginning to manifest. The look in her own eyes began to reflect a determination she had not recognized before. It was as if, by facing the unknown, she had started to rediscover herself. With Clara's support, she began attending support groups for people facing abusive relationships. The stories she heard resonated with her own, and connecting with other women helped her understand that she was not alone. Vanessa realized that many of them had also faced a similar internal battle, and by sharing their experiences, she found a safe space to express her emotions. This exchange not only encouraged her, but also made her feel she could trust herself. Meanwhile, Ethan did not disappear. The threats continued, but Vanessa was learning to prepare for them. She began studying how to protect herself and reinforce her security. The nights she couldn't sleep were spent researching and planning. With this, the idea of surrendering to fear began to dissipate. Vanessa remembered Clara's words, "You are stronger than you think," and each time she repeated them mentally, her confidence grew. One day, while walking with Mason in the park, Vanessa spotted Ethan across the street. Her heart raced, but instead of running, she stood her ground. It was a decisive moment. Looking into his eyes, she realized that his presence no longer controlled her. The fear that once paralyzed her was transforming into a quiet determination. Vanessa was no longer alone, and that filled her with a new strength. Her meetings with Clara became frequent, and their friendship blossomed amidst adversity. Together, they created a plan to keep themselves safe, supporting each other every step of the way. Vanessa began to understand that overcoming this struggle was not an individual act, but a collective effort. Their friendship became a source of light in the dark. This deep connection not only strengthened Vanessa, but also helped her realize that she was not alone in this struggle. Over time, Vanessa began to apply the lessons she had learned. She allowed herself to feel, cry, and even laugh. Each emotion became a step in her healing journey. In her interactions with Mason, she strived to be an example of resilience. By sharing stories of courage and overcoming adversity, she planted the seeds of a new perspective in her son's mind. Vanessa realized that success was not just about escaping Ethan, but about being able to live fully and freely. The deepest lesson Vanessa learned was about herself. She began to understand that true wealth was not in having a problem-free life, but in finding joy in the little things and in the daily struggle for safety and peace. Life was not easy, but each challenge she faced made her stronger. Reflecting on her journey, Vanessa realized she had transformed into a woman who not only fought for herself, but for everyone she loved. The journey was not complete, but Vanessa's transformation was undeniable. She had become a woman who knew herself, who accepted help, and who above all believed in her ability to overcome. With new eyes, she began to see the world around her, filled with possibilities and hopes. And so, with her heart full of courage, she prepared to face any storm that might still come, knowing she was not alone, and that each step taken brought her closer to a free and fulfilling life. The day Vanessa finally decided to confront Ethan was marked by palpable tension. The sun was shining brightly, but inside her the clouds of anxiety hung heavily. After weeks of preparation, she felt stronger, but uncertainty still haunted her. Clara had suggested going to a public place where she could feel safer, and so the cafe in the city center was chosen as the setting for the confrontation. Upon arriving at the location, Vanessa took a deep breath. With Mason by her side, she tried not to reveal the whirlwind of emotions overwhelming her. Her son watched her, his innocent eyes reflecting the confidence she tried to convey. But as she waited, her mind filled with thoughts about what could happen. What if he threatened her again? What if she couldn't stay strong? When Ethan appeared, a chill ran down her spine. He looked thinner, but his eyes still carried the same coldness that terrified her. Vanessa remembered all the sleepless nights, the moments when she felt trapped and powerless. But looking at Mason, something inside her solidified. It was no longer about her. It was about the life she wanted to build for her son. Vanessa said, "I'm here to talk to you. We need to settle this once and for all." The tension increased. The tables around them seemed to distance themselves, and the noise of the cafe became a distant echo. Vanessa recalled Clara's words, "The truth is your most powerful weapon." With that in mind, she continued, "I will no longer live in fear of you. The life you forced me to lead is over. I am filing a report, and I will not go back." Ethan laughed, but there was a desperation in his eyes. "Do you really think you can stop me? I will always be in your life, Vanessa. You will never be rid of me." In that moment, Vanessa realized that the battle was not only against Ethan, but against all the fears that had imprisoned her for so long. She looked at her son, who was watching her with confidence, and a wave of determination enveloped her. "You can try, Ethan, but I will not let you control me again. I am stronger than you think." The words seemed to echo in her heart. The courage that was once a whisper was now a shout. Ethan hesitated, and in that instant, Vanessa saw a weakness she never imagined existed in him. His vulnerability encouraged her even more. The truth she was defending, the life she wanted for Mason, was more powerful than any threat. "You can follow me, you can threaten me, but I have support now. I'm not alone. There are other women like me, and together we are stronger. You cannot silence me anymore," she declared, her voice firm and clear. Ethan fell silent for a moment that felt like an eternity. The expression on his face changed from arrogance to confusion, and finally to anger. He realized that the power he once had over her was dissipating. "You will regret this," he said, but his voice sounded empty, lacking the confidence it once held. Vanessa no longer feared his empty threats. She turned around and, with Mason by her side, began to walk away. The weight that once oppressed her was replaced by a lightness she hadn't felt in a long time. Looking back, she saw Ethan standing there, powerless, and knew that this was the turning point. She had claimed her life. That afternoon, as she walked back home, the sun seemed to shine more brightly. Vanessa realized that she was not just a woman who had overcome an abusive relationship. She had rediscovered herself. The journey had led her to understand that true strength lay in accepting her emotions and fighting for a better future. Her friendship with Clara solidified even further, and together they continued to support other women in similar situations. Vanessa learned that life was made of new beginnings, and that even after failures there was always a new chance. The road ahead might be challenging, but now she had a clear purpose: to be an example of courage and resilience for Mason and for all the women around her. Deep down, Vanessa knew that freedom was not just a physical state, but an emotional achievement. And so, with a renewed heart full of hope, she prepared to face whatever came her way, knowing that this time she was not alone. Vanessa walked alongside Mason, her heart beating with a mix of relief and trepidation. The cafe was behind them, but the words she exchanged with Ethan echoed in her mind. It was a new beginning, but also a new reality that she needed to confront. She knew that the decision to file a report would bring consequences, but even so, she felt lighter, as if a huge weight had been lifted from her shoulders. When they arrived home, Vanessa found Clara waiting for them. Her friend had become an anchor in her life, always ready to listen and offer support. Upon seeing them, Clara smiled, but soon realized that something had changed in Vanessa. "Hi, how was it?" Clara asked, concern evident in her tone. "I talked to him," Vanessa replied, her voice steady. "And I won't let him control me anymore. I filed the report." Clara's eyes sparkled with pride. "You were amazing. I knew you could do it." Vanessa felt a wave of gratitude for having someone like Clara by her side. "I'm still a bit scared about what could happen, but I don't want to live in fear anymore." "It's normal to feel that way," Clara said, sitting down next to them. "But you made the right decision. Now it's time to think about the future." As Mason played on the floor, Vanessa and Clara discussed the next steps. Vanessa knew that the path ahead could be complicated, but she was willing to face it. "I need to make sure Mason is safe. I'm going to seek legal and psychological support. I don't want him to grow up with the fears I had." "That's great," Clara agreed. "And I'll be here to help with whatever you need. We can find support groups and other women who have gone through similar experiences." Hours passed as the two discussed strategies and resources. Vanessa felt more empowered with each passing minute. She realized that she was not alone on this journey. There were other women who were also fighting for their lives and for their children. That night, before going to sleep, Vanessa sat next to Mason as he colored. The soft light from the lamp illuminated his face, and she smiled as she saw how focused he was on his task. The sight of her son filled her with deep love, a renewed motivation to move forward. She thought about how his life would be different now that she was determined to fight. "Mason," she said, breaking the silence, "you know you can always tell me anything, right? I'm here to protect you." The boy looked up, his eyes shining with innocence. "I know, Mommy. You're strong like a superhero." Her son's words touched Vanessa's heart. She realized that by fighting for her own freedom, she was also giving Mason an example of courage. He would grow up seeing his mother stand up, not just for herself, but for him. The idea of being a role model filled her with a new sense of purpose. In the following days, Vanessa began to get involved in a local support group. She met women who shared stories similar to hers. Each account was a reminder that the struggle against violence and control was a collective battle. Together, they formed a support network, exchanging experiences and offering comfort. Vanessa felt more connected than ever. One night after a meeting, Vanessa and Clara were talking about the challenges still to come. "You're really changing your life, Vanessa," Clara said, holding her friend's hand. "And that's not easy, but you're an inspiration." "It's not just me," Vanessa replied humbly. "It's all of us. Together we are stronger. And most importantly, I want Mason to see that it's possible to be happy and live without fear." As time passed, Vanessa's life began to transform. She felt more confident, more capable of facing the challenges that arose. The emotional scars were still there, but now they served as a reminder of her strength, not her weakness. And looking at Mason, she knew that every step she took was a step toward a better future. The journey was still far from over, but Vanessa was ready to face whatever came her way. She had found her voice, and now, with Clara by her side and a promising future ahead, she felt truly free. Vanessa observed the transformation that had occurred not only in her life, but also in Mason's. The boy, once so apprehensive, now wore a more confident smile and contagious joy. The sleepless nights, the silent tears, all seemed part of a distant past, a chapter she had finally managed to close. Now each day was a new opportunity to build something better, both for herself and for her son. With the support of the group of women, Vanessa felt stronger than ever. They shared not only their pains, but also their victories. Vanessa realized that the fight she had waged was not just hers. It belonged to many other women who, like her, sought to free themselves from a cycle of fear and control. The recognition that she was not alone motivated her even more. Through these connections, she learned not only to defend herself, but also to value herself. One day during a meeting, Vanessa felt inspired to do something more. She decided to organize a community event to raise awareness about domestic violence. With the help of Clara and other women from the group, she planned an afternoon full of activities for children and informative lectures for adults. The goal was to give a voice to those who, like them, had suffered in silence. Vanessa wanted other women to know that there was a path to freedom, a path she had finally begun to walk. The event was a success. The park where it took place was filled with laughter and lively conversations. Vanessa, amidst all of this, felt a genuine happiness. She had managed to turn her pain into something positive, and that empowered her even more. When she heard other women sharing their stories of overcoming challenges, she felt that every tear she had shed was worth it. However, Vanessa knew there was still an unresolved chapter. Ethan, the man who had kept her under control, was still out there. The idea of revenge was not just a desire for justice, it was a need to close a chapter. With the support of her friends, she planned a meeting with him. Vanessa didn't want to live in fear anymore. She wanted to show him that behind the pain, there was a strength he could never erase. On the day of the meeting, she felt her heart race. It wasn't just the anticipation of facing her past, but the certainty that she had transformed into someone he could never intimidate again. With a firm and determined voice, Vanessa confronted Ethan. She laid bare everything he had done, not only to her, but to so many other women. The expression on his face, which had once been one of control, was now one of surprise and fear. Vanessa realized that at last, she held the power. Revenge was not just about retribution, it was about reclaiming her life. After the meeting, Vanessa returned home with a sense of freedom. She had not only managed to expose the truth, but also freed herself from the chains that bound her. Life now had a new meaning. For Vanessa, true success was not just about getting rid of Ethan, but also about rediscovering herself as a strong and capable woman. She had learned that life is full of lessons, and that true wisdom comes from overcoming difficulties. With Mason by her side, she looked to the future with hope. Vanessa knew there would still be challenges ahead, but she was ready to face them. The friendship she had built along her journey would support her, and she committed to being a voice for other women who needed help. This is your time to act. If you identified with Vanessa's story, or know someone who might be going through a similar situation, don't hesitate to share your experience. Together, we can create a powerful support network. Like and subscribe, as every interaction helps us bring more stories of overcoming challenges and transformation. It's time to spread the message that strength and courage can change lives. Let's take action now.